Most women have jobs in the corporate world, and when they're finally ready for something new, they leave to start their businesses. Today's guest is doing the reverse. She ran her own freelance copywriting business for 10 years while traveling the world and is now ready to get back into corporate. She calls it a career in reverse. It's definitely a story not to be missed. Hello and welcome to Season 6 of the Womenpreneur Asia podcast, and I'm your host, Krista Good. My mission is to uncover stories and strategies of Asian women entrepreneurs in Asia to help you as you navigate your own business journey. This episode is brought to you by Redbox Studio. Today's episode is with a Singaporean freelance copywriter, Grace Goh. Grace always loved traveling, and she decided that a freelance writing and communications business suited her lifestyle as she went all over the world. Grace was a digital nomad long before the term became trendy. A couple of years later, she even partnered up with a fellow Singaporean to establish a business to teach English abroad in countries such as Laos, Vietnam, and Myanmar. While everyone was worried for their jobs during the pandemic lockdown, Grace said she hit one of her best months ever as a freelancer. And yet, she is taking a career in reverse by going from freelancing to full-time employment. She calls it the Great Rejoining. In this episode, we dig into her reasons for wanting to rejoin the corporate workforce, why she decided to close her English teaching business, and how the freelance world differs from the full-time and why she still is trying to go for the latter. We also talk about starting companies as revenge. Yes, that is a story you need to hear, and the lessons learned from partnering up with others in a business. Today's conversation is unusual, but at Womenpreneur Asia, I want to show you the realities, emotions, and experiences of entrepreneurship. These are what I call the gritty realities of entrepreneurship. Grace was initially unsure if her story could fit what I had in mind. I said that it would be helpful to share her story, if only to enable us to reflect on what it means to be in business and to understand that entrepreneurship comes in all experiences, emotions, and colors. Enjoy today's episode. Hello, Grace. Welcome to Womenpreneur Asia.
Hi, Krista. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Grace, where are you today?
I'm in Singapore at home, which is my home office, my house, my parents' home. It's all the same.
So, Grace, tell us a little bit about Grace herself.
I find this a really hard question to answer. Like most of the time when people ask me, tell me about yourself, I'm like, I'm a bipedal carbon-based sentient life form, which is a definition for almost every human out there. But otherwise, I guess if this is a podcast about work or women or entrepreneurship, I guess most of the time I'm a freelance copywriter. And that's how I earn my money. And the rest of the time I try to enjoy my life as much as I can.
And what does Grace do when she's not working on her business or doing writing?
Oh, what do I do? Well, so I've been a bit not so well recently because I've been having long COVID. So I've been prioritizing my health, which has given me a few hopefully good habits of sleeping early, having a better diet, blah, blah, blah. But before all this, I guess normally I have two main hobbies, even though I've scaled back on them. One of them is yoga. So I used to be fairly into it and kind of practice every day, kind of, even though I've stopped. The other one would be music. So I sing in a few choirs in Singapore. So classical music choirs, yeah. But these are totally amateur, it's for fun. But I like to say I enjoy my hobbies.
That sounds like really artistically inclined hobbies. Like one is like, you have to be quite limber. The other one is like you have to be, good with musically.
Well, I think there are skills, right, to master in that sense. You may never master them, but I actually enjoy getting a little bit better at things that I try to do progressively over time. So I think that's what attracts me to doing these things in my spare time. Yeah. Another thing I do quite a bit or used to is to travel. I used to travel quite a lot and hike, especially long distances, like trails and things like that. I enjoy nature and meeting other people when you walk long distances. So that is actually one of the main reasons why I even have a non-conventional career path to begin with, so that I can travel and not be tied down.
So that probably is a good time to ask you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your business and your writing and all the things that you've been doing. Let's go back to the very beginning. What was the very beginning like?
You mean not being in a normal job, basically?
Yes, not being in a normal job, because you talked about freelance writing, right?
I know, right? Okay. Well, so in the sense, my last normal job was 10 years ago, and I was working for the Singapore government in R&D. It's basically technology transfer, and it was intellectually satisfying, but I felt very stifled in terms of creativity, maybe, as well as the freedom to do your own things. So, and I was young and stupid, right? So I was like, I'm just going to quit my job and travel because I want to travel. I can't stand it. I want to travel. Get out of Singapore. Carry a backpack and wander over various mountains and meet people. And that's basically what I did. And so how I fell into freelance writing was that I had all these engineers and scientists I knew from my time in the R&D agency. And most of them are very bad at English, or they have zero idea of marketing. And I don't think I had any at that point, because my background was all along in science, and I've been working with them for a bit. So I was very toot, as they say, as well. But I think I was just a little bit better than them. And what happened was that some of them took technologies out of the Singapore government and started to form companies. And with that, they needed people to fix their language and marketing. And that's kind of how I fell into it. I did not have a clue what I was doing. I was just like, you've grammar errors there, let me fix it. I didn't know what a press release was, what a blog post, what a website, whatever, and product. But I basically kind of just started doing it, and I fell into it. And over time, just continued doing different forms of freelance writing. I basically never said no to any project that came to me. And it just kind of continued from there. And before I knew it, I was like, time has passed.
And so 10 years have passed since then?
10 years have passed, but I have to be very honest. Unlike a lot of people, I didn't plan to do it. I've always identified myself, if you have to have an identity, as a reluctant creative, as a lifestyle freelancer, someone who did all these things as a means of, I guess, having adventures, paying my way, allowing myself to have freedom. And that's also kind of how I fell into starting a business when I was about 2016, I think. Yeah, a few years later. Yeah.
So I do know that, the career in writing and the business of writing is not an easy business, right? Because you're dealing with humans, and they can say, I don't like this piece of writing, or I would like to change it this way, I like to say it this way, and you become their instrument for changing things and making things. So how's the experience of being in communications and writing all these years like? Have you had times where you wanted to really throw in the towel, or really I just want to quit this?
Of course. I mean, I think a lot of it is not only individual projects. Sometimes you're just looking at other people who didn't do this, and communications is one thing, but being creative, and I think writing and maybe things like programming, anything that requires intensive brain work, is actually quite tiring. So I don't know about you, but I can only have a limited span of time every day that I'm focused and doing all these things. And so when you see other people who are working in maybe normal jobs, and they're theoretically working 8 hours in the office, but hey, most of it's meetings.
Yeah, I know,
running
right?
around. I know. And I think to myself, I'm paid for the project, or I'm paid for the hours I'm working, but I don't get paid for sitting in meetings, which is brainless.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it, but it kind of, sometimes it happens. So these are times where, yes, I think, why am I not, skimming off the corporate fat of other people since they have so much to give. But for individual clients, yes, I know what you mean. Yes, some can be frustrating. And so I have, so to speak, ditched clients before. Either partly, most of the time, it's also because of my lack of experience, especially in the beginning. They were not a good fit, or I didn't know what to ask them for, or yeah.
And
there is always a danger of that.
And now that you've had that experience of working and learning and all that, what would you say to yourself, if you were going back in time and saying that, hey, Grace now is going to tell the Grace then 10 years ago, like, starting this business, what would be that advice that you would give to her then?
Oh man, I would tell myself, I think I did everything wrong. I mean, I would tell myself, think of this properly as a career, even if you're doing it as a part-time and lifestyle thing, so that you put in the proper systems, say finances, invoicing, administration, contracts, things like that. Draw your boundaries clearer, because I think I was too nice to a lot of people I knew in the beginning. I was used to, oh, you're my friend, oh, whatever, I'll just do anything, Yeah. And amongst other things as well, so this is something I had been struggling with for quite a long time. I've always not been very comfortable with the idea of myself as being a creative, even though I sometimes work with agencies directly and do crazy, stupid creative things, because I've always been coming from like a science or engineering background. So it's kind of weird. People are not always the same. So I would probably tell myself, excuse me, don't give a shit about identity. It's ridiculous. just get paid. Just do the work, give them what they want and get paid. Forget about who you are. Doesn't matter.
Was that part of the thing that you struggle with? Like you said, that science, and then were reluctantly creative, or you were creative, but you just felt that you didn't quite fit that mold?
I felt like an imposter most of the time, because a lot of people you see in the creative freelancing space, if they're web designers, writers, or animation, whatever they are, they come from artistic kind of backgrounds, or they majored in things like English or social sciences. A lot of them find their first job either as an internship in university, for graphic design or whatever, and they all show up in agencies at various points. And I feel like I never paid my dues.
You never did agency work.
I never did agency work. I mean, I've contracted to agencies at various points, but I've never actually done agency work. And I look at them and I'm like, I don't want to do that. Nor do I think I fit, because it's also, when you talk to people, the conversations are different. I mean, it's nothing bad or anything. You just talk about different things. And it took me quite a while of getting older and more mature to realize, some people like me are probably just in between. You're neither scientific or artistic, or you're kind of both or in between. It doesn't really matter. And you have value in that sense, because you can liaise between these groups. You see things that one group doesn't see. Yeah.
Which is a great point to make, because I think a lot of people do feel like that sometimes. Like they feel that they don't really belong in that world. And especially the word creative, it is so strong.
Imposter syndrome every time. You're like, I'm not creative, what? I can just fix your
creative
language.
comes with its own baggage, right?
Baggage, totally. Yeah.
So a lot of people say, I'm not a creative, but I do creative work. So I guess you probably belong in a category that I do creative work, right? Your writing, your communication.
Yeah. I mean, the rational part of me knows that this is just a label that you use to make yourself do whatever. It doesn't really matter, because your identity is really, who gives a shit, right? But it becomes something that can take over your sense of self-worth in your field, especially because I did not really choose this field. It was just the easy and convenient thing to do that allowed me to travel and not be structured and join a proper job 10 years ago.
And that is exactly what I want to talk about, because I do remember that you said that you were a digital nomad way before the term became hip and trendy. So where were you nomading, if there's such a thing?
Right, sure. So I'm sure digital nomads have been around forever, actually. It's just only in the past, 5 years or so, where communications technology has gotten better, remote work has really blossomed, and then people go, oh, digital nomad, and the whole geo arbitrage, go to somewhere cheaper so that my first world dollars spent better, has made it a lot more attractive. But I think way back when, it was just, I wanted to travel, so my priority is travel. And I am a minimalist traveler, so I just carry one backpack is okay. And because of that, I can carry my laptop. And because I carry my laptop, I can tether my phone or do whatever it takes, whatever cheap Wi-Fi, or whatever what country, and just do work if any work comes in. So I guess the first few places I went to was probably backpacking around various parts of Southeast Asia at first. This was almost maybe 10 years ago, just carrying a backpack and go lah, go stay in hostel and do work lah, with your laptop. But that's obviously not very conducive to work. And I think at various points I was more interested in finding a country to just explore and check it out. And for a series of unrelated events, I somehow ended up in Myanmar in 2014. And I basically got myself an apartment and stayed there for, like a month or two at a time, and flew in and out because you don't have a proper visa, so you're faking it. Yeah. So Myanmar was other than traipsing around Southeast Asia, Myanmar was my first, so to speak, digital nomad destination, which compared to many recommended destinations today, does not fit any good criteria. When I went, there was almost nobody had a SIM card or Wi-Fi. You had to go and it was in development at that point. You had to go to only certain hotels where the foreign press and diplomats would go so that you could actually pay for a coffee and sit there and get 2 hours of Wi-Fi or something like that. SIM cards were crazy expensive. A friend lent me one, and the upload speed was something like, I don't know, kilobytes per second at that point. So I don't even know why I went there. Oh, and there were power cuts, a lot of power cuts.
This is very strange. I had this at the back of my mind as you're talking, right? Why Myanmar? Where it's like, I mean, I know other Southeast Asian countries may not be as, inconvenient, but Myanmar really was like not
at that point
on that list, right?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think it was because I kind of had backpacked around a lot of various Southeast Asian countries by then. So I wanted to go somewhere new and somewhere where no one else was going, where I think it was an instinct in me just to go somewhere where other people don't go, where it's really a Wild West, kind of. And so some things were kind of strange. The year before, I had been doing a long-distance hike in Japan. This was the Kumano Kodo. It's like a pilgrimage trail that runs through the Wakayama prefecture. One of the strange things was that somehow I ended up in this weird temple, and it ended up having some connection with Myanmar. And there were all these photos on the wall of the temple of friendship missions between the monks of Myanmar and monks of Japan. And I just had this really strong thought, why not go there? I've never been there. And so what happened after that was, you know how things happen through synchronicities? I think my life is actually a series of all these synchronicities. I can't pronounce it, I'm sorry. So, it was just, I thought, okay, I'm going to go to Myanmar. I'll find some way there. It doesn't matter. Kind of the next thing I knew, a friend who was from that country, but who lived in Singapore most of her life, invited me there for like a week. So I was like, okay, let's go check it out. And when I went there, I thought, oh, wow, no internet, no SIM card, no electricity, holes in the street. Maybe, we'll see. But it was, I kind of fell in love with the energy and the people, because by then I had backpacked around quite a bit of Southeast Asia. And it was the first place I had seen in the major city, and this was Yangon, where there was almost zero tourism presence. Like every other country in Southeast Asia, there would be some development or some tourism. But at that point, this was totally, the country had barely opened up like a couple years before. So it was really, really underdeveloped. And so the next thing I knew was that just through another series of coincidences, somehow, I think it was a friend, told me that, they needed an English language teacher in Myanmar because the Singapore government was starting some form of teaching of English language as a form of diplomacy. And so they contracted it out to all these various training companies. And this one training company said, we need an English teacher. And I happened to meet them, and I'm like, I'm planning to go anyway. So they're like, okay, great, let's hire you. And I'm like, I think my English is good, but I never teach English before. Okay, no, to be fair, I did teach some English tuition. I taught some SAT. I have some understanding of grammar and teaching, but not to the level of teaching proper adults and representing Singapore. But I thought, well, you want to give me a job, I go. So I went, and I used that, it was like a 3-week or 1 month long course in Yangon. I used that as the basis of a move to the country. So I went there and found myself an apartment and went teaching during the day.
What an adventure.
I know, right? Everything just happened by like, okay, Yeah, and
So
I
you
had friends, to be honest. I mean, to be fair.
yeah, you had friends, but you found the opportunity, and you said yes to the opportunity, and there
Mm.
you went,
Just
and
went. I
you
know.
just went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I could have come back, but I was like, I'm just going to stay. Why not? After the teaching contract of 1 month was over, so I'm going to stay. Yeah,
So when you stayed, you already was in your freelance writing business already,
more or
right?
less.
More or
Kind of. I
less.
mean, like I said, freelance is it's a very fuzzy word, right? It's a very nice thing to tell people now, but it's also another way to say unemployed, or minimally employed, or whatever you want to call it. I was saying, if you need a sound bite, people are reluctant to be creative because creativity implies a sense of achievement and identity. But freelance is a very easy thing to say in order to make yourself feel, to show the rest of the world that you're respectable. You're not unemployed, you're just freelance.
I love your honesty on certain things like this. I mean, who else in their, who else would say it so honestly? Yeah? And that's why I'm talking to you, Grace. I mean, that's the best
Okay,
part,
sure.
because you really have really, well, you had an insider look at being a freelancer, so you really know what it takes. So now that you've
another project and they hired me, and I was like, oh, okay, And this was like the next year, and this time in the capital city of Myanmar, Naypyidaw. And I was like, all right, new city, let's go try. So no big deal. And they treated me well enough, so I was okay with that. But then I think what happened was that a few months after that, I remember it very clearly because it was such a stressful period of time. They had a new contract for an English teacher, and this time was in Vietnam. And again, this is all under the same government tender that they had. And they're like, okay, go. And I'm like, okay, sure, I go. Vietnam, new country, I don't care, right? Why not? And again, for another 3 weeks or so. But when I went there, and I realized that for once they had failed me. So the materials they gave me were shit, like total shit. And this was not for a low-level English class. This was for a more advanced level class. So if we're talking about English as a second language, these people actually spoke English decently well and just had, some issues in their grammar and things like that. And this is no longer Myanmar, where I'm sorry to say at that point, the educational level was and still is lower. Vietnam is actually fairly developed, and English teaching has been around for quite a while there. So people know what they're doing and they can call bullshit. So the long story short was that I showed up there with really bad materials, and students who were standing in class looking at me going, like, really? Okay. This is what you're going to do?
This is what you're going to teach me?
Yeah, they were looking at the materials. I was looking and going, oh my God, this is like totally wrong, totally too simple and too basic. And I was representing in my own way the Singapore government, because it was done in the government training centers that was sponsored by the Singapore government. So it's very proper. And I was like, oh my God, this is not even imposter syndrome anymore. This is total disaster. And I remember that the first day going, I'm going to run away from this. I hate this. I'm going to run away. And I could have, because this training company was actually pretty fly by night. They didn't make me sign a contract. And later I actually found out from their accountant, who I made friends with, that they were underpaying me. And the only reason they had hired me in Myanmar in the first place is because they didn't have to pay for my accommodation and flights, which they would have had to pay for a normal trainer. So I was just so like, oh. Anyway, long story short was that I faced a dilemma, and I could have run away. I could have, okay, guys, I'm going to ditch you.
I'm gonna go back to Myanmar.
It's on you. Yeah, or it's on you, like, because the class was going to start already, or was already starting. And I was like, it's on you. It's not my fault. There's no legal contractual thing to hold me here. I can run away. And then I remember it was so clear. I was like, I'm going to do this. I can do this. Like, I may not be a certified English teacher. I wasn't at that point, but I know what I'm doing, and I think I can make the curriculum, and I think I can do it on a daily basis for tomorrow's class. So it was really crazy stressful, because I would be in the classroom for about 8 hours a day. And then once it was over, I would go home and spend the next 8 hours or however long it took to create curriculum for the next day. And I would have to print it out and get it all done. And it's not something that a normal English teacher would do. I think I felt sick at the end of the whole thing. This is so stressful, it's crazy. But I think it was a pride thing. It's like, I already showed these students my face. I'm not going to go up there and like you're not going to see me tomorrow. The training company will send someone else, and it's not my fault. Goodbye.
But that
So
also
I
says a lot
survived.
about your values, right? It means you really, you really stuck it out in
I
your
think
own way.
also
You
scared to lao
created
kui
curriculum.
lah. Yeah, I scared to lao kui lah. It's really, I think teaching is also a performance. So when you have about 30 people staring and looking at you with like incredulous, really, this is the kind of material you have. What are you going to do? That kind of face. And I have to say it this way: Vietnamese people are a lot sharper. They can call your bluff. When you do that, I felt like, oh my god. So that's what I did. Yeah. But as I went through the whole process, I knew at the end of it, I'm going to make this company pay. I'm going to pay for it.
And how did that happen? And that is the part where I'm really interested. What happened next?
I know, right? So just by chance, so this was the Vietnam Singapore Training Center, and they had 2 classrooms, and they were running 2 courses at the same point. So all these were funded by the Singapore Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So there was another teacher teaching another English class there. It was an old Indian gentleman, also from Singapore, and he was really helpful to me. He gave me some of his materials. His class was at a different level, but I could still use some of his materials, so it saved me quite a bit of work. He also helped me take my class on a couple of field trips. We went together, and so when you have field trips, you have lesser curriculum to prepare and things like that. So he was really helpful. And at the end of it, we were both bitching because, you bitch all the time, right? I was bitching to him all the time about, I have to do all this. I can't talk to you now. I can't hang out with you guys and the students and go drinking, which is what we used to do, or because I have to go and prepare a lot more material for tomorrow. And so at the end of it, the 2 of us were sitting down talking like, you know what? My material is shit. His material wasn't that great. It was a different company that hired him, but it was not that great either. We were like, why don't we just do our own? Why don't we just take these contracts if we can, of course, And so I found myself, by chance, a business partner. And we decided we would start our own company and I wouldn't say undercut, but just try to get these government contracts rather than let these generic fly-by-night training providers, a lot of them who aren't actually teachers on the ground, just get the money and skim it off our backs. So that's kind of how I started a training company, a small one, and for all these contracts that I was really doing.
So did you manage to get the contracts that you were eyeing?
Yeah, so the first year, I think it was beginner's luck as well. Like we were just really lucky. And I think because this had been going on for a few years and a lot of the existing training companies were pretty complacent. They're looking at their curriculum, looking at the way some things are probably done. The proposals aren't great. Probably, I haven't seen their proposals, but seeing the brochures that come out with the proposals, they weren't that great. Some of the curriculum was kind of repetitive or reused and it was kind of obvious. So it looked like these people were complacent, I would say. Because this was through the Singapore government, these things were the tender listings were all published on a platform that's visible for everyone to see. So we could see that, these people bid this much. These are the 10 people or so who are the usual regulars who bid for these contracts. So when we came in, I guess we were just fresh, we were lucky in the sense that our competitors were not strong. I guess that's what it was. And so in the first year, we had a few different contracts and we actually hit, I would say, 6-figure revenue, which was like beginner's luck, in the first year. Yeah, it was beginner's luck, I have to say. But I guess our proposals were just a lot better. And I have to say that I guess writing helps. If you're writing for other people anyway, you write your own proposal, you have to write it better than these generic people. Yeah.
Yeah. So, wow.
So the first year was good.
That is a great story. And what happened after that? So you were doing 2 things. So one, you're teaching and having your own training company. And then you also did the writing and the comms, right? On your own.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened after that? I mean, I guess we did more of the teaching because teaching, ends up taking quite a bit of time. And not just curriculum development. It was just everything else with running an actual company, even though it's a small one. Because when you're doing freelance, you can just anyhow do lah. I mean, most of the time, as long as you do the work and if the client is trustworthy, you bill them, they pay you, and that's it, right? You just do your taxes now and then you're done. But with a company, and this because we were getting government contracts. There was not too much, but there was also administrative paperwork to deal with, a bunch of stuff. And then this marketing, and then there was always constant proposals to write and sales, and then we had to look more proper. So there were a bunch of things we had to do. And oh yeah, I had to get my certification because I was still running around as an uncertified English teacher. It was not good.
So you got yourself certified?
Yeah, that means the basic standard like English teaching certification. And yeah, but you have to actually do it. Yeah. And we also have to make our own curriculum. So this is one thing that, even though I bitch about all those training companies being lousy and horrible, they did have some curriculum. But when you're on your own, you have to make your own.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah, you have to make your own. And then you want it to be good, right? So you spend a lot of time on it. Yeah. So that was what I was doing for like a couple years or so. Yeah. So my freelance writing took a bit of a step back, but it was always, I could do both in parallel just because, that's the way it went. Yeah. And I hired a few other teachers as and when the contracts came and sent them to various places. So these were Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, and Myanmar.
So you did have a pretty good training business happening. Out of
it was small.
How should I say? Out of like when we were talking, you said that started a company out of revenge.
Yeah, it was. It was totally out of revenge. Damn it. How dare you?
But it worked out well for you in the sense that you did add value to the people who were taking your classes, and you got yourself certified as a teacher or trainer, or how do you call it? Teaching English.
Yeah, English teacher whatever yeah. But yeah, it worked out. You're right. But I realize also that you need to, in the long run, it cannot just be, revenge is just a starting, right? You need a lot of energy to actually be a proper entrepreneur or businesswoman, and you need a longer term vision or bigger plans or goals, or whatever. And this is going to sound terrible, I had never been really, really interested in making money or being a businesswoman. So I saw a lot of the administration as a necessary evil. At some point also, I guess my partner, who was actually a very good teacher, and we enjoyed working with each other, but my partner wasn't really a business partner who could hold up a lot of the other aspects of the operations and other things. So at some point, I think this was in 2018, which was about 2 years or so, and I was like, I'm not so interested anymore. I miss Sienna already.
And what do you do after that? After you got tired of it?
So and so for a while, okay, I think I was avoidant, so I just kind of sort of did less because I felt like I was doing a lot of things, and that the other side wasn't holding up so well, or other people I wasn't so inspired, so I kind of just did less. And at that point, one of those creative agencies, this is Jace, you know her from Creatives at Work. She asked me, hey, do you want to do a 6-month contract work in a company as a writer? I'm like, okay, sure. So I took that on instead. And when I was doing that, I didn't realize that you have limited attention span. So I didn't pay so much attention to the training company business. And I think my partner didn't as well. And it kind of just, we didn't really chase for things that we should have chased for. Before that, we were thinking of expanding. We were thinking of going to Vietnam. We had some contacts there and partnering with them and trying to find some way to expand in whatever ways through, say, corporate training rather than just government English teaching. But the energy wasn't there. And I'm very much a person that moves through inspiration and energy and flow. So it was like, so it kind of was dormant-ish. I mean, we still had projects and we were servicing and it was still doing. Some people went to Indonesia, a few government contracts as well. But my heart wasn't in it. Yeah, so I'm not a good entrepreneur in the sense that a lot of people would be, you should build or grow or pivot, right? Which is what people say, pivot. And I'm like, I don't really want to. But I was doing enough to maintain it as it is. And I guess what happened was that was not good enough when other competitors started upping their game.
I see.
Yeah. So when other competitors started upping the game, I got like, okay, now we're going to do this.
So you need the energy. You need that energy.
I needed something. You were right. I needed something. So in this case, I guess we tried to partner with someone else who was a competitor because there were new requirements of the companies that were eligible to bid for these government contracts. But the long story short was that I think in 2019, they basically screwed us over. Like we had a plan and an agreement to do things a certain way. And we bid for these contracts under their name, like a joint bid instead of our name. And they got the contracts. And after that, they turned around and told us, no, we didn't have such an agreement, go away. And we were like,
Oh, so you got the
We
job,
got
but they
screwed.
didn't. Yeah. Oh, okay. So they didn't
yeah, we got
do
screwed.
anything. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's one of those like, oh shit, we should have had a proper, but it was in writing, but not in a proper writing because we were taught these guys are our friends as well. So I made a really, really bad mistake, and that basically screwed up our momentum for quite a while. Yeah, and then COVID started. Yeah. So I mean, that was actually quite a huge blow, and I think it was psychological rather than physical or monetary, because we still had a couple of leftover contracts. It wasn't such a big deal, but it was psychological, and I think this is why I'm not sure that entrepreneurship is always the right thing for anyone, because a more rational person would just be, okay, fine, I do something else, or I work around it, or I make sure I don't get screwed like this in future, or I bring this to court or some form of arbitration. But my instinct at the time was just I don't want to do this anymore. But then COVID happened, and I mean this story is going up and down. I need to stop this soon. But yeah, COVID happened, and then I brought on another teacher who was once teaching for us part-time, and she was interested to bid for new contracts because at that time it was COVID and everything turned to online teaching. And so she was like, hey, let's do it. I'm like, all right. By then I was kind of really hands-off on the company. I was like, I'm still taking some small amount, whatever, I'm still servicing whatever it is, but I really don't care. But I got convinced by her, and we spent a week or two and put together a really good proposal and sent it off. And I was thinking, we won't get this. But in the middle of COVID, we got one of the contracts again, and now we had to be like, oh shit, we have to service this, and it was all online teaching, so everything had to change. So that was another big crazy scramble because they told us like a week before the first course was going to start. So we had 1 week to set up everything. We were like, crazy. All the technology, test everything, figure out your learning management system, figure out all the technical requirements and tell it to these people in, I think our first course was it Laos? No, it was Cambodia. Basically, it was people with very bad internet connection in these countries. Yeah?
Oh, that's even more stressful, right?
I know, right? So I guess if there's a common thread to all this, I have to say that I tend to thrive under crisis, but in between, I really don't want any crisis. I'm very lazy. But so it worked out because then this other teacher, she became the main teacher, and I was the tech support teacher, basically. A lot of things that you're doing to make sure that it's running well and diagnosing people's tech problems not in a first world country with reliable internet. We had students there was one guy who always come to class in a trishaw. So he'd be holding his little phone, and like behind you see the traffic. He'd be like, yeah, teacher, I know, my teacher, I know. And I'm like, what the hell?
Well, that was having quite an interesting student taking the lesson while riding in a trishaw.
Or something, And there was another guy who had a cockerel in the background all the time, and we couldn't, because he was, it was COVID, and he couldn't leave his family farm or something. But anyway, it was fun. So actually online teaching was really fun. And then it made me and we had new blood, basically, like a new business partner, so to speak, this new teacher. We were like, okay, we're going to go for the next year's project, blah, 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 blah. So this brings us to last year, where I went on a nice long holiday again. I was carrying my backpack and climbing mountains in Spain and carrying my laptop and making sure I was getting all these proposals and things done. But at least I was in a first world country, so the internet wasn't so bad. But when you're on top of the mountain in the middle somewhere of nowhere and you're trying to write something in the middle of the night, it's not easy.
So you were being your true self again. You're being a digital.
I was doing one of these like the Spanish pilgrimage routes, the Camino de Santiago. But I was doing one of those not common ones. So it was down in the south. And I didn't speak English for a month, by the way, because nobody spoke English where I went. But I was carrying my laptop, and everyone else was carrying just food and sleeping bag. I was carrying my laptop. I was like, I'm going to get all these teaching contracts done, and I had a bunch of writing that I owed people. So I was walking during the day and spending 2 or 3 hours at night writing. I was thinking, oh, it's quite fun because it's not something I would do again because I think I got kind of old to do that, So there's a difference between digital nomading when you're sitting in a country and you have a nice setup and I'm working, and then when I'm done, I go and have fun and enjoy the country, right? And this was actually a proper hike. So I was walking 8-9 hours a day. I walked 1,500 kilometers over 2 months, walking over trails, and you're carrying everything you own. And then at night, I was like, oh, okay, I need to stop for 2 hours and do some work. I didn't do it every day, but I tried to.
You're doing a pilgrimage while trying to get
I was,
work done.
yeah.
Other people
I know,
are
but
just
to be fair,
hanging by the beach.
I know, right? I'm drinking all the wine, So I would drink all the wine too, and after that, I was like, oh crap, now well, what?
Now I have
But to be
write.
fair, I did not work. Yeah, I did not work more than 10-15 hours a week max, and I would do the smart thing and take a day or two off and sit in a hotel in a city if I could, and actually just try to work, But sometimes you couldn't because you're in the middle of somewhere nowhere. But anyway, keep going.
And that was something that pushed you to take some decisions, right? After all that
kind of
reflection,
yeah, because I think I was getting older, amongst other things, and this, in the sense that this wasn't the first time I had done it, not this particular pilgrimage route, but I had done the equivalent of this at least 5-8 times by now. I've done various hikes, the Appalachian Trail, various hikes in Japan, pilgrimages to Japan, the Spanish one, a couple of different ones I've done, and as well as backpacking. And I was like, I don't really want to be carrying my laptop everywhere. Yeah. And the trigger for change actually happened when so the contracts, the projects that we were trying to get, we worked really hard on them, and we were actually quite certain we were going to get them based on certain feedback from the clients. And for some reason, we didn't. And I think in the end, because they put it down, they got the more established people to do it. It was still a small little company, and they told us that we didn't quite fulfill all the requirements so possibly there was a mistake. So long story short, it's possible that I didn't focus so well on them because I was busy traveling. Priorities, not good. But when we didn't get them, and this was a series of block contracts, so it wouldn't have been on a yearly basis, it would have been for a 3 or 4 year basis. When we didn't get them, my first instinct was actually kind of relief, because
Why?
I didn't actually want to service them. I know it was crazy, right? Because if we had gotten them, it would have been like $1 million whatever thingy. It would have good for the work for the next 3 years or so. We would have 7 or 8 contract trainers, and we would just send them around, but we didn't. And I talked to my other training partner at this point, and she was the younger teacher, and she was also like, you know what? I'm also not so excited. She actually wanted to do more higher level teaching, not basic level English as a second language teaching. She wanted to do more pedagogical related teaching. And then my original business partner, who was still in the game but kind of quiet, he was a lot older as well. His health wasn't good. He was also a retired, So it's kind of mutual consensus. It's just the energy wasn't really there. So the long story short of starting a company was I started out of revenge. The energy pushed me for a while. We had a great first 2-3 years where the money came in easily. Then we got betrayed by a kind of partner, and then COVID sunk in. But COVID gave us actually a second win, and after that we're like, okay, we can do this again, But it was, I guess the second win was more like not really a second win. It was just a next push, But it didn't quite. Yeah, emotionally we were all meh. Not really,
I think maybe because also your heart was not in it. All
it had
you
not
wanted
been
to do
for a few
different.
years.
Yeah.
Yes,
And you wanted to do different things for a while now, and you just were looking for that. Okay, maybe if you thought the contracts came in, then you would just go with it, right? Continue.
Cannot say no to money, and then you can do it well. But yeah.
It's like you can cruise with it, right? You could cruise with
Yes.
it. It was like really auto cruise. Yeah, but because it came to a point where you really had to make a decision, and you had to tell, okay, do we move forward or do we not?
Yeah.
Or do we stop? Do we stop here? Yeah.
Right.
So do you make the decision
It was,
to stop?
yeah, we could have continued or try to find some other things, or pivot or change or whatever, take on other projects, government projects, pivot to do schools, whatever, try expansion again, whatever. But we were all, the three of us were like, don't want lah. And I think this is the thing. If there's a pattern in a lot of things I do, I realize that I need to feel quite strongly about it.
You need to have the fire burning.
I know. And if the fire's not there, it's like, why would I? Yeah, I'm not. It's crazy, but I wasn't driven. I'm not, and have not been driven by money, achievement, or building something, which tends to be the case for a lot of entrepreneurs. Yeah. Because even if you build something and you're like, oh, it's nice, I like it, but it wasn't really. Or I could be just one of those people who needs to change something every few years.
I think you need to be inspired by something.
I do.
Or
Yeah.
get something that really fires you up, like makes you really, really
Yeah.
passionate about it, and then you put all your heart and soul into it.
Yeah, maybe. Or just even by crisis or fear or, negative emotions. And it's not negative inside me, but negative on the surface, Like,
And-
you have to deliver this.
And that probably is also a good way of why I wanted to do this episode with you. I remember where we spoke earlier and you were saying that, you didn't think that you had a story to tell, or you didn't think it was worth featuring.
So I've been dealing with long COVID actually for quite a few months.
And how do you feel after like this long COVID thing? How do you feel from time to time?
Actually, most of the time now is okay, but I tend to relapse. Like I get a flare up of symptoms like fever, vertigo, heartbeat, all sorts of funny stuff if I don't do something right. So sometimes it's like overexertion of something, and then it flares up, and I'm just like, oh. Then I will avoid the world for 3 or 4 days and just basically binge read storybooks and lie in bed and like, I mean, I check WhatsApp lah, but the brain is not working, headache. I think I'm in a recovery path, but I think if there's one thing it affects you, is also your confidence level. Like I'm talking to you and I feel really normal now, but sometimes you can get very, what am I doing? What I'm doing? You get like, they call it, I guess, depersonalization. So not just depression, but you don't really feel like you are a self, a human, a person, or whatever. You're just going through the day. And it really affects, I think, momentum to do anything. Affects your confidence, affects your sense of agency. Yeah. So I'm kind of aware of that these days and I'm able to work around it. Yeah. But that's it's a long way of saying that, like, I was supposed to change my job. I do things last year around August, September. I was like, okay, I'm going to go do something else. And then since then, the past 5 months or so, I've been taking it slow. Because I had a bad November and December where I was basically lying in bed a lot, and it was, it affects you.
I mean, that could really be part of it. Explains why you're changing tracks right now.
Yes, part of it. Yeah, I think health is one of those things, and that's why I also don't really want to travel as much. I mean, I still want to. I'm like, I want to go place here, go place there. Then I'm thinking, I don't think you have the health or the energy to do that. Yeah.
So actually, COVID affects people differently, right? Everyone gets affected differently.
It's real. It definitely makes your choices, different. Because I think I'd been all along healthy and athletic and running around, and not everyone can carry a backpack and run around and do things and whatever. And I'm like, I can, I don't care. And then I think having health issues really forces you to. It's very cliche, forces you to slow down and reflect. And I'll say to that, you have to do it because you cannot do anything else if you're lying in bed going, As onset of midlife crisis, I'm 39, which apparently is
You're young.
the average age.
You are
I know,
young.
but apparently it's the average age of people starting to question their purpose and direction in life. So, so along with the health issues that came from long COVID, along with deciding to close down the trading company, a bunch of these things all coming together, and I'm like, what is the path that I haven't taken? I guess is the other way to put it. Not so much as what do I don't like what I'm doing now, I want to change, because I kind of still do like what I'm doing, but it's more like, what else can I do now? What's the next thing that I haven't done that maybe it's time to look at if it's before it's too late? And then lying in bed, being sick, I came up with 2 things. I was like, well, have never really properly worked in an office job. I mean, I did long time ago, but it was very, very junior, beginning. I've never really properly worked in an office job or see if my resistance to, so to speak, corporates or freedom, or not having freedom was actually a result of just being young and I want to travel. So if you remove the whole, I want to travel from the equation, if I want to settle, is it so bad? And then when you add how jobs are changing, hopefully, with remote work, hybrid work, and maybe it will be different. So that's kind of a question I was asking you. What would it be like? And because I think partly I've been alone so long, you don't dress up, you stay at home. I got makeup on today, but normally I'm wearing very, very cawan, I'm thinking, maybe it'd be nice to kind of put on a dress, so nice clothes, and go out and meet people and have lunch with them, and that sort of thing. And the other thing I was asking myself is that I've been running around so long that I've never really paid attention to relationships. So maybe I'm probably almost post-fertile, but maybe it's time to start dating again. It's been a while since I had, because I've just always been focused on doing my own thing. So it was just a whole, what if I'm maybe not totally, but what if I'm a slightly different person? What if I'm just like everyone else around my age, except maybe they started 10 years ago, Because you're right, I don't think of myself as old. But a lot of the things that I'm thinking of doing now, which is maybe find an office job, and start dating, is something that a woman 10 years younger might be doing. So it's not like I want to go back in time to 10 years ago when I was like, let's have a job. But I was just thinking, I didn't take that path. What would it be like to take a similar path to that from this point? With the things I've experienced, with the things I've done, how would it be different? How would it contribute? Would I even be able to? Would I even want to? Maybe I'll try this thing and go, oh, yuck. But the question is, I have not done it, so maybe why not? There's more energy to this question.
Does it inspire you in that way, thinking of going into the corporate?
I'd say it both inspires me and scares me, which is a good sign. Because I'm not sure the inspiration is super strong, but there is an element of fear of, when you're freelancing, and then when you start your own business, you are your final arbiter. So kind of, you think you're good, but maybe you're not, but who knows, who cares, right? Like I said, freelance could be just unemployment, and it's, sometimes you get a lot, sometimes you get nothing. But sometimes when you're working with other people, there is the fear of, not so much as fear of not being able to do the work, but fear of not being able to interface and interact in the social conditions that they are used to, that I've not been used to. Do you know what I mean? So it's not about people skills or EQ. It's more like the expectations of other people, how they interact with their colleagues, subordinates, bosses, the idea of people in a larger organization and what they are working for. So if you're very idealistic, they're working, together for some impactful work that has meaning. Most of the time, most people are not. They're probably working at a decent enough job that gives them sufficient pleasure for a decent paycheck, and then they spend their off hours doing their own things. And I'm not averse to either option, if that makes sense. I think I'm just an observer. I like to see something different. So even, just to put it back to you, even changing, doing something else, it's not just for me about novelty. It's also about observing and trying to, live my life through other people's experiences and see are they doing these things because by default they're doing it, or are they doing it because this is the social structure and system that makes them do it this way. I'm not sure if that makes sense. I'm kind of articulating it as I'm talking to you.
That makes sense, because I think you like trying. I think maybe I say that way. You like trying things on to see whether it fits or whether it doesn't. And either way, it doesn't matter. It's just about just trying it and being open to the concept of just trying, right?
Why not?
When I read your LinkedIn article on the Great Rejoining, I was like chuckling to myself. I was thinking that is such a great, I mean, that's such a great way of putting it, because people are talking about the Great Resignation, all these people quitting, and there you have Grace who's trying to like, let's get into this and see what it offers. But how do you envision work for yourself right now? Business, work, writing, comms, when you think about what you're going to do
Work.
in the next years?
Right. So I think if you're talking about employability, probably I would have to be employed under my core skill set, which is still currently writing. So most likely it'll be in some form of comms or marketing related kind of roles, like as on a day-to-day basis. The funny thing is, because I think I've always been extremely versatile, I'm not even very particular about the actual work I'm doing. For me, it's more, and again, it's more that I'm working with a great group of people whom I trust and like. I don't have to be friends, but I need to like them and trust them. And then we're working on something together. That's something I miss a lot, especially in recent years when you're working on everything by yourself and you're making all these decisions by yourself. So I think more than anything, I'm looking for a great team to join. And I'm sure I'll be working with writing as my core thing because that's how people will probably hire me. But I'm happy to do a whole bunch of different things. Yeah.
So, yeah, great way of putting it. And in your own way, what have you learned from all this? From all your 10 years, starting a business, training company,
It's a business.
and all this. What have you learned about entrepreneurship that you could say for sure that, yes, I've learned something and I want to share this something with people who probably are in entrepreneurship, or maybe they're not. Maybe some of my listeners are people who are in corporate and they want to try entrepreneurship. So it could be either way. It could be they're entrepreneurs or they could be in corporate and trying to think of a business to start.
Right. I'd say, I guess a few things. I guess first, the definition of entrepreneurship is many things. It doesn't have to be your Silicon Valley tech startup, tech bro kind of VC thingy. It can be even small business that is part-time. I mean, if you consider freelancing as a kind of solopreneurship, people do a side hustle. So it's a small thing, and I don't even think you need an identity of I'm an entrepreneur or I'm not to do it. I think it's more like you see some opportunity or something and then you take it, which was the case for my training business. Or you have some, for some people, a passion. Like I know people I have a friend who was actually working in corporate, but then she started a florist side business on the side because she enjoys doing it. And then that is also entrepreneurship of your own. So I don't think the word needs to take on so much connotations. It really is whatever you make of it, and no one needs to give a shit as long as you do what you're doing, The other thing I would say is that a lot of my opportunities came up because I just talked to a lot of different people. Like you happen to be in a place that you talk to people, right? So, you don't just talk to them about what you're doing. And I think it's not like you're talking to them because you're trying to look for an opportunity. So I've been to enough, when I was younger, like startup networking things, where it's just people going, oh, this is what I do, show, blah, 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 blah. How can I help you? How can you help me? And I'm like, that's so fake.
Yeah, like, can you just chill? Can be more chill about stuff like that, right?
Yeah. So I think it matters to actually meet people for, like be genuinely interested in people for who they are and what they're doing, not how they can benefit you or how you can benefit them. So that's some of the things that sometimes I think on LinkedIn and other business networking, social networking, it gets very, I don't really like that feeling. I'd much rather when I meet someone actually, ask them, if they don't mind, about what drives them. You don't want to get into such intimate detail with total strangers, of course, but you can find points of commonality. And then because of that, you build some form of rapport. And, when you are doing that, you're also a lot more authentic because you tell people what you really want and maybe what they also really want. And then maybe 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, they ask you, hey, I remembered you for this. Is this something you would be interested in? And that's where opportunities happen, I feel, if you're not overtly looking for it. Now, of course, this doesn't mean you don't go and look for it. So if you really want to start a business, you should go and look. Look for the problem, look for the market, find a fit, find a partner, test your thing, everything. But yeah, I'm not the right person to ask for that sort of thing because my strategies have been actually probably very different for most people.
Which is precisely the point of this episode, is because I don't want it to be, there's always this conventional path that people take. And then there's the unconventional path. So the unconventional paths are the ones that I'm really interested, because I think those add colors and flavors and interesting things to life. Because if we all did the same thing, life would be pretty boring. Even entrepreneurship.
But I'd like to challenge you. I'd like to challenge you there about conventional versus unconventional. So maybe another soundbite. But what I'm thinking is that actually there is no real difference between the two. You can't really justify in terms of the majority do this, the minority do that. There is no path, without sounding like cliche Buddhist or whatever,
That sounds right, Zen.
Yeah, but there actually isn't, because you only see a path when you look backwards and go, oh, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did that. When you're actually doing something, you're just doing something. So there isn't a conventional or unconventional. The only path there is one whether you're aware of what you're doing, or versus you're just mindlessly doing it. So if you just do what you're doing and you just blah blah follow do, then that is just your, so to speak, path. But if you at various points go, okay, I'm doing this, okay, I do that, okay, I do this, and it may not be even a clear decision to do something, then that is an aware path, and you just take the path forward and so just go. Where it is conventional or unconventional is for other people to decide, and why should you care about what you think?
I do
authentic.
agree on that. Yeah, I do agree on that point. So how do we become more aware? Maybe that's my question.
I have to say, Krista, ask me that in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, 30 years' time, when I finally figured that out. But okay, one caveat, one thing for that is maybe some form of authenticity to yourself, would help be like a veto function. So you're not doing something because you think you ought to do it because other people say you should do it. That doesn't really give you awareness of whether you're on the, so to speak, right or true path, but that's one way to reduce or eliminate useless detours, I guess.
Yeah. Be true to yourself. So what's in the future for Grace is that you're looking for something that still utilizes your knowledge and your skills of the last 10 years, but you want to be in a team setting.
I do. And for that, I'm willing to give up my traveling. So shocking.
I know, right?
And go to an office. So shocking. And give up the rights to laze around at home and, wearing just whatever I want. But hopefully that's not like a 5-day work week. Maybe it's a hybrid rather than fully on-site. But yeah.
Is it because of the pandemic and all that's happened that has made you start to realize, well, maybe this other work environment setting is doable? I mean, prior to 2020.
Totally. Yeah.
You wouldn't have.
You're right.
You wouldn't have thought about this, right? The hybrid.
No.
3 days from office, 2 days in the home. Yeah.
You're totally right, because I had a 6-month contract in a company before the pandemic, and I could do the work, but it was the whole office 8 plus, 9 plus to 6 plus, and then commuting and. When you're doing creative work, sometimes you're very unproductive at certain points at a time, and you still have to sit there instead of taking a nap. And I was like, oh, yuck. So in a way, to answer your question, yes, the pandemic has made a huge change in the way we work, and I think it's basically converging, right? Freelance work, remote work, hybrid work. Yeah, you get paid by different people, or you get paid differently, but the day-to-day work that you're doing is probably converging if you're not in the office all the time. I'm perfectly willing to go to an office 3 days a week. It's fine.
What about something that you are no longer afraid of?
So I guess I would say, I'm talking to you right now and I feel articulate and confident and talking and blah, blah, blah. But when I was younger, I had a lot of fear of social interaction. And I think I also had I wasn't so good with mental health. So there were a bunch of things. And so I think at various points of my younger life, I was very avoidant and very fearful of actually interacting with people. So in a way, part of my development over the not just 10 years that passed, like I guess growing up as, from teenager to an adult, was dealing with all these fears. These days I find it not a problem to chat up a stranger, no matter which country I'm in, even if I don't really speak the language. I don't find it a problem to go on stage and talk to people or in front of a class and teach them, or perform. But ask me something like this 15 was 20 years ago, or maybe even 10 years ago at various points, and I would have been very, very freaked out. Like in a catatonic state, So it's not just fear of public speaking, but it's a deep sense of insecurity, of self-esteem and self-worth. And I'm not afraid of that anymore. And have not been for a long time, I would say. Yeah.
And how did you overcome that? Is it through just doing it? Speaking more?
Yeah, I guess.
Talking?
Yes. I think it was just doing it. And then realizing at various points that actually the you who is scared and freaking out doesn't really exist. And the you who is actually confident in going around and talking to people. So I've had friends ask me, how could you just chat up some random stranger in Paris or whatever? This happened to me many times, and then the next thing you know, you got invited to their birthday party, total stranger. And I'm like, so I think it's just, and I was like, so I realized the person who does that also doesn't really exist. It's not. Don't take it personally. It's not me. I just happen to be talking to that person, and when you pay attention to the other people instead, I guess that's one way to get out of social anxiety or fear of any sort, is to pay attention to the other thing or what's actually going on, and not your own your mind. So yeah. To add on to that, right? So one way that this hasn't really developed yet is also probably my fears for romantic relationships. So I've had a few disappointments and other things in the past, but partly also because of my own anxieties. And I dealt with them most of the time by, as usual, running away and like, I don't want to deal with this. So in a way, my next step for personal growth is to apply what I've already done for other aspects of this and just go do it. Yeah.
That's a great thing to aspire to. And I actually wanted to follow that up with, what's the personal goal that you want to, what's the personal goal for yourself this year? So you really, you already answered that question even before I asked it. Yeah. But it is true. It is true, right? I mean, you focus not on yourself all the time, and you focus on someone else. It does reduce a lot of the internal chatter, fears, or probably like being self-conscious about things and yourself especially, and the things that happen in your mind all the time.
Yeah. So if there's something that entrepreneurship or doing any kind of something different from your usual path helps, is that it actually develops you, I think. And if there is one, I guess, common thread in everything I've done throughout pretty much my whole life, it's some form of improving yourself, but not in terms of that kind of productivity way, but rubbing out all the, I guess, rough edges of yourself, the parts where you're fearful or anxious or limited or small. Trying to be more authentic, be more open to what's going on, be inspired by other people, be more creative. All these things, they're, like I said before, they're identities. We don't really need them. We need them as a story to help us go through life and tell people who we are as a heuristic, as a label. But deep down inside you, so this is a Walt Whitman quote, right? I contain multitudes. I'm not just one person. I have so many things, and most of the time it doesn't actually matter. So if we don't take ourselves so seriously, you will grow more. If you spend more of your energy being open to things and trying new things and meeting people and not thinking about yourself so much, it really helps growth. And I think there's one thread, it would be growth. If you're looking for a story thread that would link, the previous narrative to the next one and however many. It's just growth. Who have you been, and what else can you grow from, and where can you go next?
That really serves as a great reminder to everyone, even to myself. But sometimes I think that, at the end, we're just who we are, and sometimes it's stories we tell ourselves. So we tell ourselves good stories, or we tell ourselves bad stories. So we might as well tell some good stories to ourselves and go out there and do something. Sometimes I always feel that sometimes people are afraid to do a lot of things in their lives, and I said that, well, you have to try it, right? Baby step, try something.
Yeah.
One thing, two things, whatever. If it bombs, well, it bombed, right? But if it doesn't bomb, maybe you really like what you're doing and turn it into something even more interesting in the future for other people.
Yeah. And then you take away your own learning from it, even if it doesn't seem to work out.
Yeah.
From other people's perspective.
Yeah. So you learn or you grow.
Or both.
Learn and grow, yes. So we've had a really good conversation today, and I'm really grateful that you agreed to be on the podcast and to tell your story as openly, as honestly as you are as a person. I'm really grateful for that. And are there any things that I should have asked you but I didn't? I know you wanted to get it off your chest.
No, I don't think so. I think you're really good to talk to because you're very good at finding problems. Asking me questions. I don't think I have anything well, okay, maybe one thing. I'm saying I want to do all these things now, but like maybe it might change.
It might change. So finally, where can people find you since if they want to reach out to you?
Well, I guess the best is probably since this is a sort of career thing, probably LinkedIn. Yeah, you can find me at you can type Grace Go. There's a whole bunch of us in Singapore, so maybe grace.k.go, which is my LinkedIn short name. I have a website, but it's such a mess that I won't share it right now.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Wherever they can find you will be the best place.
Yeah, wherever you can find me, and anyone who wants to talk to me about pretty much everything. Especially, I know a lot of women probably listen to your podcast. Anyone who wants to talk to me about anything, or just grab a drink or coffee, you're totally welcome. Just chat me up, and I love to meet new people, really, and I'd love to listen to your stories, not just talk about my own. So we'll agree to a fair exchange. Next time I'll listen to yours, Krista.
That's the thing about writers, right? We are so curious about other people's stories. We just want to dig into their stories and snuggle in their stories. I wish it was snuggle.
And we try to we try to shape it. We're always listening. We don't like to be put in front of other people.
True. So that's the reason why I have a podcast, right? I mean, it gives people a chance to come on and tell their stories, and hopefully your story resonates with someone else out there, and the person will say, hey, I need to reach out to Grace and maybe make a new friend. And so that's how things grow. People networks,
Yeah. And organically and authentically, I think, which is very important to me.
Yeah. So that's why I never want it to be just like a Q&A, right? I always want it to be a real conversation where I can dig your stories out of you, the good, the bad, the crazy, the mad, whatever it is that you have undergone in your life. Yeah, I think those
mad, bad, sad, and glad. Yeah, but sorry.
Yeah.
You are inspiring me, Krista. Maybe I will do a podcast at some point. I've never done it.
Yes. Yes, because let me tell you this. You've got a good voice for podcasting.
Oh, okay.
Honest.
I know, but thank you. Oh, but it's not just the voice. You see, you must know how to ask and find things from the other people, and actually listen. Yeah, which we probably have.
Which you probably have, because you're a communicator, and I have full faith in you that you're a comms person. I'm sure you already have those skills in you. It's just that perhaps you need to revisit them if you're ever intending to start a podcast.
Cool. I might. We'll think about it.
Yeah.
Now that I have more time in my hands.
Yeah, next milestone in Grace's life is we start a podcast.
Yeah, but for what? Well, I'll think about that.
That's what you think about, right? For what?
Yes.
That's a good one. So thank you so much, Grace.
Thank you for inviting me on this podcast as well. I had a wonderful time talking to you. You've really actually clarified a lot of my own thinking for me. Ooh. I know, right? This is what happens.
A lot of people tell me this. After they've been on my podcast, they say it's very good for them, like a form of reflection. And they go away with, I think, a lot more clarity of what they intend to do or what they were thinking about but couldn't quite decide. So I hope it has been helpful in that way. I'm like a kind of pseudo-therapist.
But I think most people actually deep down really know, but they need to get their own surface thoughts in order. and
to
comes
hear
through.
And to hear that from their own selves, right?
Yes.
Comes out as your own voice talking about it.
Yeah. Right. Wow, so profound.
So zen, right? So zen. Okay, so we will definitely see you. Thanks.
Okay, I would love to catch up with you privately anywhere else as well.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Did you like today's episode? Grace and I had such a fabulous time conversing with each other because we understand the world of writing and communications. There's nothing like speaking to someone who knows what it's like to be on the inside. I've been a writer for most of my life, and I've been very lucky in that I've always used communications and marketing to create and add value to our clients and help them grow their businesses. Grace's story shows us that entrepreneurship can be wildly exciting, but it can also be stressful and crazy. What is unusual is that she braves herself to get back into the 9 to 5, although these days working is probably more in a hybrid mode. She also shared her lessons learned as an entrepreneur, and she's never afraid to explore experiences and be okay with not knowing everything completely, but daring to take a chance on everything. And I find her honesty utterly refreshing. She was honest about her feelings. In writing, as with other communications, we must be honest with what we want to write or say or create. This is what I strive for in every episode that I produce. Today's episode may have been a little longer than usual, but I hope you have laughed with me and Grace and enjoyed her perspectives about corporate work and being a solopreneur. If you have enjoyed today's conversation, do me a favor, subscribe to the podcast and share the episode with a friend. It's been a pleasure having you here with me today, and I will see you next Friday.